we continue to move deeper in our understanding of the science of mind and spirit. And so in January, we do a Back to Basics at the Centers for Spiritual Living. And we talked about the thing itself, spirit, and how that shows up in our life. And then the way it works, how it works in our life. And then today we're talking about what it does and how to use it. So today we have chapters 3 and 4 in the Science of Mind text. And so it's a beautiful place to be, to know that we have that potential, all these unrealized potentialities that are within us, and we have those capabilities that are already ours. So we just need but claim that and just know that the deeper the roots, the greater the fruits. Right? So the more juicy and the greater and the more nourishing and nurturing the fruits are as our roots in this teaching grow deeper. So, and our roots go back, way back to the Transcendentalist movement in the U.S. and also in Europe. And it also includes ageless wisdom teachings, so taking the cream of the crop of all of the mystical teachings of oneness and wholeness and how that can show up in our daily life. So it's a practical spirituality, and sometimes it's good to know what the teaching is not, so that we know what it is. The teaching is not a me, me, me teaching, like me, me, me. It's not a me, me, me teaching. It moves us into being we, into community. And so we have great classes and great events and those sorts of things. What we know is we do understand that no one but ourselves can focus on our spiritual growth. We get to do that for ourselves. And that no one can change our consciousness but ourselves. And that no one can become healthier in our livingness but ourselves. And when we lift ourselves up, we then make the world a better place. And then we contribute in a wonderful way of being in that we. So we're transforming the world person by person by having our individuality and our spirituality in that new thought, ageless wisdom, and bringing that to the forefront of everyday life. So we recognize that there's an immense power here in our spiritual community. Virtually every spiritual pathway has an emphasis on a sangha, on a group, because what it does is it supercharges our consciousness. And we take all the beautiful blanket of love and all the juju that's right here now, all that energy, we take that with us. So if you feel energy in the room today, we have that. We're taking that with us. And that's what supercharging our consciousness is all about. So we invite you to stay prayed up. Stay prayed up with us and to have that move us forward down the pathway of life, no matter what our pathway is. We know that it's clear and that we see from that high vista and mountaintop that Dawn is talking about. We recognize that. And so now the science of mind and spirit it's not a teaching which emphasizes guilt or fear. It's not a teaching that suggests that we're unworthy. Quite the opposite. What it does suggest is that it brings us back to the love of the divine. Simple as that. The love of the divine. And what we do is we honor ourselves. We honor the master teachers. We have, and I have an affinity for the master teacher, Jesus, who was a way shower. And he talked about the gifts of our lives and what we have. And he called us back to that kingdom which is within us. That it's already within us. And when we go there, we get to have those capacities to do great things and even greater things in our lives. We draw upon the love of the divine. And then we become peacemakers where we go. We become filled with joy. And the science of mind and spirit does not teach that there's a devil or a Satan or a hell. And we don't believe that spirit is those things, but that we may have that in our humanness. But what we do is we bring our spiritual nature to our humanness. We know that there is unconditional love and that we're made as a precious creation. And what we know is that we could never be rejected We could never be rejected or betrayed because there is that unconditional love. We know that spirit is so much more than that. If spirit were to be that way, it would be a negative spirit. And what we know is that we can empower our lives by this power of choice. That we can change our thinking and change our life and open our hearts and lead inspired lives. We can love the divine. It's that simple. Love the divine. And in that context, we don't believe that there's evil and that that's an ultimate reality. Let me put it that way. Or that whatever we choose to call that ultimate source. Instead, we acknowledge that there is evil in our human experience. And if we turn that word around, it says to live, spelled backwards. And oftentimes I spell things backwards. And I get to remember to live, right? I get to remember that whatever darkness I might be seeing in my life, it's there in the collective consciousness. And that as I bring light to that, and as I become aligned at that level of consciousness, of spirit, there is that place where we love the divine. We bring that light and that love. So ultimately, that's our further understanding of the love of the divine. And as I look at my daily life in whatever those conversations are, am I bringing upset or am I bringing love of the divine? Whatever that conversation is, am I bringing upset to the situation? Or am I bringing love of the divine? I used to do some family and civil mediation, and I would sit beside a retired judge who, she was on the board of Unity, and I was over at the Centers for Spiritual Living in town, and when these parents or these business people would sit down, they didn't know what they were getting. They didn't know what was going to hit them, because we would bring them that energy or that love of the divine so that the people in front of us could resolve and dissolve whatever trouble was happening. And then have something new being revealed. Whether it was about their kids, whether it was about their business, whether it was about someone constructing a house. Whatever that was, people could resolve and dissolve what was not working. And then have something new revealed. It cleared the space for grace. And so our teaching, it's not a doom and gloom teaching. We teach that every individual can set the course for their life. We have a template. We have a template of unconditional love. We have a template to choose and how we move forward. The science of mind and spirit says that all of humanity is choosing its next step. We are supporting the awakening of humanity so that we can move out of upset and into love of the divine. So when we look at if we're acting out or acting in, whatever that is, and knowing that that's part of our awakening and that we can draw upon the strength from that and move out of whatever that feeling of separation is and move back into our oneness and that natural tendency of our oneness and wholeness, as we awaken in that oneness, we awaken those capacities that are already within us. And we create it as we're believing it to be. So in this teaching, we're not blaming others, we're not avoiding that, we're not resisting whatever that is, but our lives are about taking responsibility of the opportunities that are available in every challenge. We can change those struggles or strife or tribulation into an opportunity. So the science of mind and spirit is not about waiting for them to fix anything, whoever they are, on the planet, wherever that is, but instead it's inviting all of us to be co-creators, to embody peace, and to start sharing the love of the divine. That's what some of the things that we're not, that we're not all those other doom and gloom kinds of things. So in our first week when we talked about back to basics, we talked about the thing itself and then the way it works. And then today we're doing 2 chapters because we have a lot of good stuff going on, is what it does and how to use it, this thing called life. So some of us call it spirit, infinite intelligence, and it's all that there is, and it's what forms life out of itself. It is the ultimate stuff, that divine whatchamacallit, whatever you want to call it. So we also realize that we're made of pure spirit, and that every one of us is a spiritual being on this pathway of discovery, that we're explorers, and that there's some keys, too, in discovering these truths. And so the first week we shared that there's some keys. One being that there's oneness, that there's universal spirit, there's that power of life itself. It is that which is divine. It is that which is, in essence, that spiritual place of that image being made real. Much like we have a YouTube channel and you turn the camera on and it's that digital, it used to be film, but it's whatever goes on that digital film. And so we have the subject, or whatever that light quality of light in our lives, that lightness. We have that lightness that goes through the camera and that beautiful subject that we are, that design, and that ends up on that digital film. That's the result. So it goes from idea to whatever that power inside the camera is into form. So we are an expression of this one life. We're made in that image. And there's some steps that we can, number one, awaken in our spiritual essence. We get to be willing to uplift our thoughts. There's a willingness. There's a readiness. And we can stop thinking about that problem and start thinking about spirit. We can embrace the dream that is within our hearts. And then last week we explored how all creation moves from the invisible into the visible. And there's some things that are visible in our life that we would really like to be made invisible, right? So we can use that same power. It's the way that it works, that we set a new tendency or a new thought in action, that we have a spirit, mind, and a body. We go to spirit and put that in our mind, and it changes form. And so we have these inspiring ideas, and much like seeds, we're sowing seeds of greatness this year and having a new design for living. Much like seeds, we are planting those seeds. And much like soil, the soil just accomplishes it. We put that seed, the soil knows what to do. And then it becomes manifested and it shows up in form. So there's an intelligence, and it really matters what we're thinking and how we uplift our thoughts and how we awaken up in our daily life. So there's 3 steps as far as designing our course. We design our course, we can actually repurpose our thinking to support that new idea, to embrace our dreams. We can then supercharge our acceptance, and even supercharge that more, being in community like this. So do you know what this teaching does? Do you know how powerful this is? And I can summarize it in 3 words. It transforms lives. Simple as that. It does. It knows what to do. It's the way it works, and we know how to use it because we're here. Right? Yeah? So I know that many of us, the practitioners who are here, the ministers, and we watch this transformation in thousands of people's lives. And we know that there is that love of the divine that we bring, and that we're all practicing that. We're all in the spiritual practice. And I know that instead of bringing whatever that upset is to the situation, I bring the love of the divine. So today we have, and you know what? It's so joyous. There's so much joy here. It's so joyous to have that in our hearts, to bring that love of the divine. We had a wonderful workshop here yesterday, and it talked about looking at the space in our lives from all different directions, and to know what those qualities and capabilities are, and to bring that forward. It's just incredible. And today we have 5 key ideas. Are you ready? Because we're going to fasten our seatbelts. You ready to go? Yeah? Okay. So the science of mind and spirit, number 1, it empowers us with spiritual common sense. You know, we all have common sense, but why not make it spiritual? We have spiritual common sense. And number 2, what we can do is begin affirming and accepting our good. Number 3, we can trust that our heart is open to love. And it resolves and dissolves and reveals something new, because that's its nature. And we can let the old go and believe in the new you. And then we can also say yes and take some new steps. And I'll go into all of these five steps. Just a hand. Everyone has a hand, and we can just have these 5 steps to take with us. Because what it does is it liberates our creativity. It frees up our vision. And when I remember, I was having an experience just lying on the beach of this incredible, there's no word for it, an incredible oneness. And to just explore that further, explore what that is further, and how I can bring that essence, that divine essence, and the love of the divine to daily life. Oh, Dr. Ernest Holmes, who's the founder of our teaching, this Science of Mind and Spirit teaching, which is a guide for spiritual living, he writes in his first book in 1919, Creative Mind, he says that practically our whole race is hypnotized, thinking whatever it is told to think, and it's so bound by suggestion and hypnotized by false belief, so entangled by this chaotic world that we become confused and we're not ourselves. I know we've had moments in our life where we feel a little out of sorts. I'm not feeling like myself. A little sense of separation, that I'm not feeling in the one with the one and the wholeness and well-being that's there. So he says, sometimes we're so entangled by the chaotic world that we become confused and not ourselves. And he invites us to wake up, because too long we have listened to people. And he says, now, as we wake up, now our own soul shall speak in a language that is unmistakable. And I agree, there is that something within us that we're waking up to and that we can listen to. We always have that guidance. And that our teaching is ever available for us. And it becomes spiritual common sense. So we can bless the deep wisdom that's in every faith path. And Bertrand Russell said that few people can be happy unless they hate some other person, nation, or creed, and that what we do is desire to get beyond that in the spirit of oneness. We can live in a friendly universe knowing that God is for us and not against us, that we are worthy, that we are whole, that we are one. And I love Ralph Waldo Emerson, what he says, that when we have broken from the God of tradition, our God of tradition, maybe whatever our upbringing was or our experience was, and we've ceased from our God of rhetoric, then may God fire our heart with its presence. Wow. The science of mind and spirit gives us that common sense, that we can open our heart to the divine love. And our teaching says, hooey, to whatever that lack and limitation is of that hypnotism that happens in our collective consciousness. Hooey, that theological term, hooey, right? So we don't believe in a God that's testing us, but we know that there's a spiritual evolution in the process of our lives. And yes, we may go through some hard times, but that is part of our growing. We have changes of relationships. We have changes that go within us daily, whether it's with our health, whether it's with our finances, whether it's with whatever that experience of our relationship with that divine presence. So what we believe is that the divine presence, that divine love, absolutely loves us, and it blossoms in our life, and it brings forth the beauty. It brings forth the integrity. It brings forth that integral place, that integrity. Isn't that, that's juicy, that integrity that's there. And we can make a positive difference in this world. And so what we bring with us is that God is for us and not against us. That we are valuable. We are worthy. So we're empowered with this spiritual common sense. And what we can do is to begin affirming our good and even more good. Because we deserve the best. We deserve those breakthroughs in our lives. We have a new sense of deserving and knowing that there is a friendly force in the universe to support us. much like we support like-minded people and all those other people too. We know that we can look past beyond whatever those other opinions are and know that we can begin affirming our good because Spirit's available. It's absolutely accessible. And so that we can lean into that and have that even more available in our experience and have a harmonizing presence. And knowing that there is that love of the divine, so that as that comes back into our focus, the love of the divine, much like the camera, we know that we are valuable and we are worthy, and that's what our focus is on. And it becomes clear, it becomes in focus right there and now, in the richness and the guidance that's available in our lives. So then we can trust our heart. We can trust our heart and open up to even more love because it resolves and dissolves and reveals itself even more fully. So we can let go of that unworthiness. We can move from pain to worthiness, like my great Annie too. It's because my cousin couldn't pronounce Toots, which was short for Francis. Go figure. My family. So yeah, Toots, but it was Auntie too, and she had some long-term pain, which it was actually Grandma Dee Dee. My cousin again couldn't pronounce Dorothy. That were all creative spellers, but yeah, Annie too. So she had some long-standing pain that she was able to use the teaching, and was able to get back on the path to having her body more in harmony with itself. And she listened to the presence that was within her and knew that optimal health was hers. And what it did was it resolved and dissolved that pain that she had, and that she moved even more forward with that oneness and that wholeness, and had a greater sense of that impulse of the divine that is within her. Her being essence, that being essence. So what Annie too got to do was to let go of that old stuckness, that lack of that flow that was within her body, and she began to believe. She began to believe in her new you. The new you. We have a new year, and we get to have a new you. So we can have a new idea. We can have a new you and a new idea, right? Yeah? There were a couple guys in a garage who were tinkering around, and they created Apple computers. That was a new idea, right? And there was a singer who decided to combine R&B with country western, and he was Elvis Presley, you know? And now think of a society that thinks sometimes that God is dead, but Elvis Presley's alive, right? I'm getting ready to go to Spiritual Living Convention in Vegas, and I'm sure I'll see a lot of Elvis there. But there was also a Harvard student who wanted to stay more in touch and connect with his friends, so he created Facebook. Now, sometimes Facebook is a little frustrating or a little. There's a lot to it, but that started as an idea too. And Mark Zuckerberg, my friend of mine, he lived next door to a friend of mine up in the Bay Area, and he finally moved, and she was so happy because there were all these people that were swarming around when Facebook had first come out. There was like this whole swarm of people always, and so she had these wonderful windows that she would keep, beautiful curtains like this closed because there were so many people with their stuff on and all that. But anyways, so Apple computers, Elvis, Mark Zuckerberg, all those things, an idea. The newness and the renewal of a new idea. So as we look to those higher ideas, we know that every opportunity begins with some seed, like a thought, that in every area of our life, we can apply that. We may not dance like Elvis, but we know that we can have whatever divine dance or dance with the divine that we have. And I had a friend of mine who was in a down cycle, and she had really kind of just plateaued. And she was not feeling fulfilled. And what she got to do was to stand up straight and look at the phenomenal areas in her life and acknowledge that acknowledge how far that she had come. And knowing that she became back in the flow. And so what we want to do is get back to the flow and say yes in our next steps. Say yes to those next steps in the flow. Because what we know is that it liberates our creativity and our vision. It frees us up. And so we might see that there's some obstacles in our life. If we can see those obstacles as a grand adventure and go for it, then we can allow that wondrous creativity and vision to liberate us and be freed up. So we're more than just the definitions that we've set for our life. We're not lack, we're not limited. We know that what happens here in this community and what we have available enhances our vision. And that as our vision opens up, we can go for it. Absolutely. And I want to give you an illustration. In closing, there was this lady who was in sales. And she was terrified because part of her job was to make presentations. And she didn't want to do it. And it would basically lose her lunch as far as she didn't want to do anything like that. So what she decided to do was to kick it upstairs and go to a higher thought and practice her elevator speech, that's usually like a 30-minute type of here's what I do and here's what can inspire you. Here's what I do, what I can inspire you. And what she did was she found an elevator to do it in. And so she stepped in the elevator, and the only thing that she could say was, hey, and that was it. So for about a week, that was her elevator speech. She would greet people in this elevator and say, hey. So after the sentences became a little longer, what she began to do was look for taller buildings so that she could ride the elevator. She could ride the elevator longer and give her elevator pitch. And then what happened was she was having such a good time that she began to have groupies. And she'd hand out her cards, and then she made some sales. And it was working really well for her. And what she did was she moved beyond that fear. She moved beyond that obstacle, beyond just, hey, that she was determined to overcome that limitation. And then it spilled over into other areas of her life. She became more confident and assured and poised and knowing that she had planted that seed. And as that truth resolved whatever that problem was, and it dissolved that fear, what it revealed was that love of the divine. She began to love the divine in everyone who went up those skyscrapers. And what we can do is just know that we're already evolving spiritually, and that it's just a matter of taking that first step into that elevator or into that larger view from the top of that skyscraper. So the key, that's one of the keys of transforming our lives, is just taking that first step. And we can do it. Hey, let's go for it. We can do that. We can embrace and we can share our gifts. We can go for it. We can, knowing that that's the whole message of the Science of Mind and Spirit, is that it transforms lives. So that's our invitation, is to share and to shine our gifts, knowing that it's already shining from that place. And I invite us to just turn within, and knowing that there is that illumination and that enlightenment already that is happening as that infinite presence just flows. So living in the very flow of life, knowing that there is the one presence and the one essence, which is our divine nature. And knowing that there is this connection and oneness and wholeness, and that it is good. And knowing that there is this goodness that is already within us, and it shows up as inner peace. It shows up as the love of the divine. It shows up as joy in all of the wondrous activities throughout our life, and knowing that we have optimal health and well-being and wholeness, and that there is the oneness and living in the flow. And knowing that abundance is our nature. It is that which is the deserving nature, that there is good flowing in our life. And in full acceptance and recognition of this, I know that there is gratitude in being in this grateful way, in this beautiful spiritual pathway. It is beautiful and kind and loving and our true essence. And so I release this word knowing with full confidence and calm that it is done, that it is so beautiful and shows up as an inspired life. And so be it, and so it is. And please join in a few moments of stillness.